Hello everyone! Today we're going to be delving into some more paleontological pseudoscience, this time from a chap who goes by Tyson's Mud Fossil Adventures on YouTube. Now, Tyson is friends with the much more infamous Roger Spur of Mud Fossil University, and if you're a fan of my channel, then you probably know who Roger is. But if you don't, go check out my video on the time he claimed that ammonites aren't real, or check out one of friend of the channel Planarwalk's videos on him. Basically, both Roger and this guy believe, despite huge amounts of evidence to the contrary, and the fact that cellular processes would be impossible on the scale of the creatures they imagine, that the entire planet is made up of the body parts of impossibly huge creatures. We're talking like continent-sized Lovecraftian horrors. Now, Tyson has made a video in which he specifically challenges geologists to answer his questions, and since he is a subscriber to this channel, I decided that I should take up the burden of answering the questions. Specifically, he has made a video called Geologists Explain This, It's Not Pareidolia. And would you look at that, I'm a geologist with a literal PhD in the subject, so who better to work out what the heck's going on here?
Howdy, and welcome. I'm naming this video, Geologists Explain This. And I've been linking this video I did a while back on this to geologists, and I never hear nothing back.
Well, it's time to grant your wish.
How is it geologically possible with geological theory to have a dragon on Google Earth?
It isn't, since we have no fossil evidence that dragons existed.
Here's its head, here's its throat, its body's back in here. How is this geologically even possible?
Okay, so let's investigate and find out. Let's focus first in the large area to the left that Tyson claims is the dragon's head. Without even needing to look at a geological map, you can see that this is the floodplain of the Mississippi River and its tributaries, and that this shape and this broad excavation of rock has been caused by the river cutting through the surrounding lithology. This area has been very heavily studied by geologists, and not only did none of the studies I found find evidence of enormous volumes of bone and fossilized flesh, but according to this study in the Journal of Paleolimnology, which I'll attach in the description, it's made up of quaternary rocks that include glacial deposits from the ice ages, alluvial fan sediments, lake sediments from lakes that no longer exist, and unsurprisingly, past river channels. No evidence has been found by geologists who studied the area for a giant dragon skull. As discussed in this paper and its assorted references, the older rocks in this area are made up of tons of riverine sandstones, underlain by marine sediments that have been dated to the Cretaceous period based on exposures elsewhere, and we know that there is no evidence for a giant skull underneath the Mississippi because in this attached paper, they conducted seismic surveys of the rocks to examine their structure at depth, which gives us a view into the geology down to 1.4 kilometers. And while there are some fault lines visible, you know what's not visible? A giant dragon skull. So for a video titled It's Not Pareidolia, this sure as heck looks like pareidolia. Okay, now let's go along to the area that Tyson claims is the dragon's throat. Fortunately, there's a great map from 1969, which you can find on the USGS website, which shows you how geologists have already mapped this feature. And the geologists who have been there before have found it to be made up of those same kinds of sedimentary rocks we talked about before. Let's look at this geological map and zoom in to one of the geological formations that makes up what Tyson claims is the Dragon's Throat. In this area, we can see that these rocks include the Vicksburg Group. So, is the Vicksburg Group a series of giant dragon bones and skin and flesh? No, it's limestone, clay, and sand. And we know that this is marine sediment, not dragon parts, without question, because it has tons of forams in it. You know, forams, those amazing tiny single-celled organisms that pretty much only live in marine environments, at least the types that have shells, and many of the types of forams in those rocks belong to genera that are still alive today, and we know from the fact that they are still alive today, only live in marine environments. This completely undermines your idea that this is a piece of giant dragon body. Okay, so the Vicksburg Group is not a part of a dragon's throat, but what about that big green area on the geological map that also makes up tons of the area that Tyson claims is the dragon's throat? That's got to be made up of dragon bones and skin and flesh, right? Right? No! That is the Dermopolis chalk, which has also been surveyed extensively by geologists and which we talked about in our video on Appalachiosaurus. The Dermopolis chalk also includes fossils of mosasaurs, crocodile relatives, sharks, other fish, turtles, and all manner of other things that clearly mean it absolutely cannot be a part of the body of a giant dragon. So what we're looking at here are unequivocally not dragon parts. And if you just went there and did some fossil hunting or took like 2 minutes to do a quick Google search, you would know that. The reason geologists aren't responding to you, as you say, is because geologists probably think you're trying to make fun of them. So now we go on to the Dragon's Back, and this is the valley and ridge region of the Appalachian Mountains, as shown on this fantastic structural geology map. These are sedimentary and metamorphic rocks that were pushed up westwards to northwestwards during the Alleghenian orogeny mountain building event, which occurred when the continents of Gondwana and Laurussia collided, resulting in tons of tilted and folded rock that formed the structure that Tyson thinks is the back of a dragon. This event was a major part of what formed the continent of Pangaea. Now, you can read all about this event and the huge amount of evidence we have for it in these papers, which I have put in the description, because frankly there is way too much to go into just now. But needless to say, these rocks have been mapped and studied extensively in dozens, possibly hundreds of studies. Their structural features have been studied, their ages have been studied, their lithologies have been studied. If this was a dragon, why is it made up of sedimentary and metamorphic rocks? And why does it have deformational structures like slicken lines in it? And why are there no fossilized giant bones? I especially highly recommend this paper by Robert Hatcher, which covers an overview of what we know about the event and its drivers in plain language. So Tyson, why did you title your video, "This is not pareidolia," if your first example of a dragon is just pareidolia?
Because I understand a lot of the geological theories. And you got the feathering on the back here. How is this even geologically possible with the theories they have? I mean, that, and this is not pareidolia. This is not cloud pictures. You're seeing exactly what everybody sees.
Yes, everyone sees a river delta next to some sedimentary rock exposures next to a bunch of tilted rocks that formed during a mountain building event.
You got a dragon's head right here in its throat and the rest of its body back here. How is this even geologically possible? Please tell me if you're a geologist.
Well, we just did that, so I propose we get on to his next piece of alleged evidence.
And these are all anatomically correct.
How do you know it's anatomically correct? Dragons have taken a huge variety of shapes in different folklores, so how do you define anatomical correctness for a dragon?
Down here in the Antarctic, you have an anatomically correct of a, looks like a serpent's head. How is that geologically possible? You got an eye here where it should be, an eye over here where it should be, and you got right here, or right here, right here. And then across the snoot, you have the heat seekers, the sensors for seeking its prey. How is that even geologically possible?
Well, that is the Drake Passage, and the fact that it is a large depression in the seafloor pretty clearly demonstrates that it's not a giant snake head, since surely if a giant snake body was in the middle of the Southern Ocean, it would be raised far above the seafloor, not a depression in the seafloor. But let's delve into the science of this place. Now, my good friend Sophie actually studied the opening of the Drake Passage during her PhD, and you can read her thesis in the description. She studied this using oxygen and carbon isotopes from forams, as well as spectrometry of the sediments in those rocks and also in other parts of the Atlantic Ocean, to work out how ocean circulation was changing as the passage opened and when and how it opened. It is a great read which combines a lot of evidence together, and based on her findings, it looks like the Drake Passage slowly, repeatedly opened and closed on and off after around 47 million years ago, as tectonic blocks intermittently open and close the passage, resulting in a series of transient influxes of warmer water into the upper Southern Ocean during these intervals. Her thesis is a great read, I highly recommend reading it, but my question to you, Tyson, is how on earth can there possibly be a giant snake head in the Drake Passage if we have a continuous fossil record of it slowly being opened by tectonic processes with intermittent closing, as well as the effects of those processes on ocean circulation? I'd like to propose that this makes no sense with the place just being the site of a giant snake head having just flopped onto the sea and died. This is pareidolia. So, are the South Sandwich Islands heat-sensing pits? Do I even need to explain this? No! They're just the parts of the Scotia Ridge and its associated island arc. Now, how this island arc formed is kinda complicated and relates to seafloor spreading as the west and east of Gondwana separated and rotated in different directions to one another, causing kind of funky things to happen to the movement of the wedge of crust between them, which also moved over a mantle hotspot. I got kinda confused reading this paper, but you should check it out anyway. But in any case, there's two big giveaways that these islands are not heat-sensing bits. And that mantle hotspot is important because, well, A, we have seismic imagery of the subsurface geology and crust structure underneath the arc and the passage, and we can clearly see that there is no giant snakehead. And B, these islands are volcanoes. Here's one of them erupting. How can a volcano be a fossilized heat-sensing pit? These are completely incompatible ideas, and if you had just Googled the South Sandwich Islands, you would have found this out in like 10 seconds.
Here in Morocco, you got a dragon and a fish. Mud Fossil University showed this many times. You got the fish right here, you got a dragon right here in its head, and it's spewing some whatever it is, poison onto it, and here's the rest of its body.
Now, I can't see a dragon or a fish here, but considering that Moroccan rocks are full of dinosaurs like Spinosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus, I'm pretty sure that these rocks can't possibly be the remains of an enormous dragon.
But right there, that red dot's where its eye is, and this is its head.
No! Those are just rock exposures that have clearly undergone a ton of folding. They don't even slightly resemble the shape of a skull. What he calls an eye is Sabkalemzid, which is a dried up salt lake. Not an eye, it's a salt lake.
And this is not coincidences. And you go up here, and you look right here, and that right there is a dragon's head, and the rest of his body laying out here. You even got his tail right here, and the rest of his body right here. How is that geologically possible? That the Earth just happened to create these carcasses. Here it is with it drawn out. So when you take it away, and you can see exactly what it is.
Okay, so as someone who did their undergrad geology degree in Europe, the geology of Europe is a complicated mess with tons of mountain building events, but the most important one is the Alpine orogeny, which occurred gradually between 65 and 2.5 million years ago, and can basically be summed up as the African plate migrating towards the Eurasian plate, causing tons of folding, faulting, and crumpling, and it was associated with the closure of the Tethys Sea and the rising of land levels in many places in Europe, hence why there are lots of marine deposits on land in Europe. Here are some of my own photos of places in Europe that have been folded by the Alpine orogeny, and thus in theory are presumably a part of or related to this same dragon according to Tyson. In this case, we have a picture of Lulworth Cove, a beach in Dorset in the UK. So based on this, Tyson presumably believes this is a part of his giant European dragon. And here are some more rocks folded during this same event that I photographed at Stair Hole. At this site, we have chalks that have literally been bent upwards, and if the rocks that were warped by the Alpine orogeny were a part of a giant dragon, you might expect this exposure here to be made up of dragon bits. But when I got up close to it, I found seashells and serpulid worms. You know, things you don't expect to find inside the body of a dragon, but do expect to find. But hey, let's get back to continental Europe to check the actual area that Tyson has drawn out, in what is frankly the weirdest looking dragon I have ever seen in my entire life. Okay, so let's just zoom in on this thing's head. Well, the area he calls the head is the Parc Naturel Régional du Haut-Jura, I may have pronounced that wrong, in southern France, and a whole bunch of areas surrounding it around the France-Switzerland border. Now, geologists have mapped these rocks tons of times, and according to the wonderful EGDI Interactive Geological Map of Europe, these rocks in this particular area make up metamorphosed limestones, gneisses, which are a type of metamorphosed mudstone that's very heavily metamorphosed, and metamorphosed Carboniferous to Permian sandstones and conglomerates. I've sent a link to that map so you can look it up, and it's pretty easy to look into the literature on this. So I have to ask Tyson, why is a dragon made up of metamorphic rock and not fossilized bones? Now, Tyson spends quite a long time going on and on about this supposed dragon, and frankly, I'm just gonna run out of brain cells if I keep listening, so let's just skip ahead.
In China and Mongolia, you got this massive dragon's head.
If this is a dragon's head, I'm a dragon's
I mean, that's exactly what that is. There's its right eye. Left eye is over here. It's kind of cockeyed. But then you come up in here, you can see its crowning. And it's exactly the same way in shadows over here on this side. The same as it is on this side. That's its crown. This is down the ridge of its nose. This is where it V's between its eyes. I mean, how did geology create this stuff?
Now, this is the Xinjiang, and I hope I pronounced that right, region of China, as well as a sizable chunk of Mongolia. Now, annoyingly, most of the literature I can find on this region is in Chinese, but fortunately I found this handy paper on the region's mineral deposits, which allowed me to find a lot more papers. And this paper on the region's mineral deposits is quite useful because it's told me that a lot of what's there are igneous rocks with nickel and copper deposits in them. And heck, here's some backscatter imagery of those rocks. And since the map in that paper labels the area that Tyson has put as the central bones in the dragon's head as the East Jungar group, let's look up the East Jungar group to see if it's made up of giant fossil bones. Oh look! Lots of geologists have worked on the East Jungar group, and as discussed in this paper, the group is made up of volcanic rocks like lava flows and volcaniclastic flows, as well as a lot of sedimentary rocks in between them. This paper has made tons of handy geological cross-sections of the group, and lots of the sedimentary rocks in the region appear to be from an ancient seabed. How do we know it was a seabed and not part of a giant dragon? Well, because it's full of coral fossils. And don't just take this paper's word for it, because this is a pretty crappy photo, no offense intended to the authors, but this other paper did a ton of work on the corals in these rocks and described some of them formally. So here's my question. Why would a dragon have a coral reef growing inside of the flesh within its head? That is not how coral grows.
You got its mouth down here in Wuhan. I mean, it's so obvious it's not even funny. This is a dragon's head.
Ah, yes, because dragon heads are full of volcanoes and coral.
So how is this geologically possible?
I know how it's possible. It's pareidolia.
And then right beside it, you got some kind of a dragon or something right here with its head right there. Its nose is crushed in. You got its throat going up to the rest of its body. How is that possible? To have these carcasses on Google Earth, and it's not pareidolia. How is this possible geologically?
Okay, I give up. Tyson is just wholesale hallucinating, like he took a bunch of LSD right before making this video.
And it's not pareidolia.
Okay, Tyson. That's not pareidolia. I'm not a geologist. This isn't a fish. This is a car. Godzilla is real. Oh. Wait, actually, Tyson probably thinks Godzilla movies are documentaries. These are just rocks, man! So, I'm gonna go and overdose on some titty skittles and send you out to future me, who's filming this week's Rockman segment.
You've been murdered by a giant dragon? Well, in which case, welcome to the afterlife, where we're going to play our weekly game of Rockman. For anyone who doesn't know, Rockman is the sentient weapon which I shall use to take over the world. These letters are a geological phrase which also make up the summoning spell to bring Rockman to life. Do you have what it takes to stop the rise of Rockman by guessing the phrase before I can complete him? Each week, you guess a letter. If the most upvoted letter is not in Rockman, then a rock goes on him, and I am closer to world domination. But of course, if you win and get the phrase first, then you can pick a forfeit for me at the end of this game. So, the highest upvoted letter in the previous episode of Rockman was W. So, is W on the board, or is another rock going on Rockman? No, W is not on the board, which means another rock goes on Rockman, and my victory draws ever nearer. Although I doubt it, given that you're only one letter away from the first word. In any case, now back to the main video.
It's just a large winged
Europe.
That's what a dragon is!
Thank you to everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like, subscribe, ring the little bell icon to stay updated. And before I go, special shout out to my wonderful extra special Dilophosaurus patrons, Ours and Geneva, and my amazing Radiolarian tier patrons, Irae, Glenn Collins, Jean, and Eric Feenstra. Your support means the world to me, so thank you so much. I need to finish editing that damn Jordan Peterson video I filmed over a month ago, and God knows when I'm going to be finished with that. Hopefully soon. In any case, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye!